Today's facility committee meeting, we really wanted to spend some time talking about the high school's needs specifically, as we kind of prioritize what to do with the leftover bond dollars and such. So I know two of the big things that we had talked about were the security entrances. And 1 versus 2 security entrances. We talked about the bathrooms and where, you know, those would be located, how many bathrooms, privacy bathrooms you were envisioning and things like that. So I don't know how you want to kind of go over this. If you want to kind of tell us, the facility committee from last year had made the recommendation of sticking with 1 security entrance. And so I think that would be where to start, is security entrances and what your thoughts are there, Mike.
Is the thought, I guess, is the thought to have still 2 entrances open to the building, or 1? Because that's a big issue in and of itself. And then at the student entrance, the location of the actual security station. I don't know if I've seen the latest update. Jeff and I just quickly walked that this morning, and I may not have the latest up to date. But in terms of, are we thinking of 1 entrance and exit only, or are we still going to think of having staff, visitor, walker entrance, and then the student entrance?
And Mike, I'll follow up on the lower entrance, because I went back and looked at the package that Kyle had sent out from last fall, where it had all the restrooms and the secure entrances and everything kind of sketched out. And that's what you were referring to this morning, is near the greeter having that secure vestibule. That was the original design. Mm-hmm. And so I sent a message to Kyle today asking for the latest progress on the design that was adapted specifically for preschool being there, which I believe was on the opposite side going along that window that you have there. So I'll keep monitoring to see if he sends that to me during this meeting. So I think that was the confusion we were looking at this morning, that if they went with the originally planned secure vestibule on the lower entry, it would be right next to the greeter station and have those visibility complications that we looked at this morning. Mm-hmm. But I'll jump in if we get that updated one that was adapted for the preschool coming through there when they're not using their door 21, I believe, entrance. Does that make sense compared to what we were talking about this morning, Mike?
Yeah. Can I share a screen real quick? Just to show what we're looking at. I think this is, that's the piece that we were looking to change, is that this part down here, we have a 2-foot by 2-foot pillar that's there. And then as you look down these, this is a row of curtain wall of glass. It's very difficult to see the actual vestibule. We had talked about moving it to this side. And then if we get further out to the right here where I'm with my mouse, that's a little bit further down to where that preschool entrance would be. So that's what we're talking about. In terms of the locations, we have 600 parking spots in our student entrance. Updated count about 500 semester parking permits. And then we have daily permits that are there, and that's not counting any growth that we would have or spots we would reserve for preschool. So I just wanted to make sure that we're, when we have walkers or visitors that park in the staff visitor lot up by the auditorium and the gym, I don't envision having them park there and then walk all the way down to that student entrance and then go through the commons and up and then do their walking. Are we thinking that we still would have people coming and going with a greeter or some kind of station at that entrance exit as well?
I was not on the facility, this is Lisa, I wasn't on the facility committee meeting or facility the last year or so, but my understanding is that we would not have access at that upper door during the school day. Staff would have access because they'd be key carded. And they would still use that parking spot, but that we wouldn't staff it. We wouldn't put the additional capital in and then the additional ongoing staffing. So during the school day, that entrance would be secured. My question is, how many during the day, let's say like a midwinter day, how many walkers do you have in during the school day?
It's a great question. It might be as many as 10 per class period. So if we have 7 class periods, there could be 70 walkers that are there. We probably could pull that, and I've never done that. We probably could pull it in Raptor just to see that. So that's, I think, a big concern. We also have all of any kind of vendor, any kind of salesperson, any kind of consultant is going to be looking to park there. And it's a heck of a walk to go down to that student entrance. So I'm just thinking of our walkers, for them to park in that lot, then walk down to the student entrance, because the student lot will be full or it'll be off to that end. That's going to be a complaint or an area of concern. We staff that right now with teachers during their duty. It's not an additional cost per se. If we did not have that entrance, we would have staff members doing a different kind of duty. So we're not paying someone, secretary, contractor, anyone like that. But I think we would get significant complaints about that. We have to obviously weigh that, and that's your role as a committee to weigh the safety of it too. I think there's a way to secure it, and they did look at some options to do that if we wanted to add secure doors in a vestibule.
Yeah, and my recollection, I don't have the sheet in front of me, is it's about $300,000.
That was
yes.
To maybe a little bit more.
Yeah, I have that there were 2 options. So for about 150,000, we could do some sort of a secure outdoor entrance, and it was about 380,000 to create kind of an inner vestibule entrance. There is what I have written down.
Yeah, what I have basically echoes the same thing. It's like a cut on the other side. And sorry if I can't show you that diagram very well, but it's an addition on this side a little bit to the west and that's what makes the added cost. I know in talking to the past facilities folks, they all said that, eventually we would get down to that one entrance on the east side, that the security risk eventually would get us to that point. But all 3 of their question basically was, what's the most economical way to still provide service and yet be secure to a certain point. And I think those are the things that those 3 wanted to get across as they were informing me about this issue.
I do have that document. May I share that? The cost document? Okay. So if we look at, Lisa, your memory is very good. So we're looking at, this is an option, $385,000. And if you think of yourself walking in to the bottom here, that's our current 5 doors. And then you come here, you walk here, and then the secured vestibule area would all have to be created. This is all open to below on both sides. There's not like a little wing there. So this is currently kind of a little bridge that comes across. So it would involve, in a probably a 15-foot ceiling, or however high you wanted to go, to make that secure, and then have a greeter there. And that significantly limits your space and traffic flow that's there. I think there's another one that this was looked at on this end.
Yeah, that's the one I have.
And, just someone threw up $150,000. I think that's very, very low as an estimate. And the reason being is that the piece over here, and I'm just using my mouse to, we don't have footings out here. We have a little bit of concrete, and we have no footings here, this is grass, and then this is the weight room. So this is really, you're punching a hole in the side of the school. That staff member would have to go into the weight room to try to get into their work area, which is fine. I mean, it's not a big deal. But you have this small vestibule here that really doesn't hold a lot of people. When I've gone into other schools, I'm thinking of Simley High School, I've done something like this, where you go into that vestibule that's already there, and then there's a staff person or a regular office over on this side, and then you have all these controlled. I'm not sure if this was looked at as an option or not, but this is not looking at any footings. It'd be putting in a coiling window or else a sliding window with a transition top that they would any other spot. And then you'd have to card control these and lock these doors anyway. But I've not heard back from anyone at Wold if that is something to be able to do or not. And I'll stop sharing with that.
Mike, have you passed that piece on to Wold at all or not? You have?
Yeah, different. I think it goes back to probably to July of 2018 is when we were just kicking around ideas and looking at things back and forth. But I'm not exactly sure if, I don't know anything about fire codes or building codes. So I don't know if there anything had to deal with that or not. But I think we have to be prepared that we're charging students in that student lot. And there's going to be days where, of course, they get here early and they want to park as close as they can. So if we do have our people who are doing walking, or if they're visiting, or if they're a parent that's coming in for a meeting or some kind, they may have to be parking in that staff lot and then walking down if we don't have that secure door as an opening.
So I know that there's many high schools that deal with just one entrance.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not always the most convenient. And I know we have, I trust that we actually have sold 500 parking passes in any given year. It is not common, except immediately after snowfall, to see that lot, the student part of the lot, even look slightly full. I know kids, we still use that horseshoe lot. I'd like to see that as we go forward with preschool designated no student parking. I don't think preschool parks long term, and there would be some accessibility. That's a change of practice, which is why I asked, how many walkers do you really have? Because I think that solves that initial problem. To me, gaining security at the high school is a high priority, especially if we're putting preschool in there. And it's hard for me to prioritize 2 security entrances. I'm not saying take it off the list completely, but it gets pretty darn low for me as we move forward with our other items, if it's something that we had. And I know that number that was penciled in there, I'm reasonably certain came from Wold, and it was exactly what it looks like. Somebody's handwritten pencil marks on there saying, okay, here's a different idea of how to approach it. So I don't know if that's Kyle's handwriting or Scott's, but it was that sort of approach. And maybe this ends up being a staged practice where we have something in our back pocket. It stays low on the priority list. It stays in our back pocket, and we go to a single secured entrance, modify our parking, and look again near the end of the bond if we need to do a different solution at the top. Again, it's only during the school day. The rest of the day that entrance will be fully open. So 6 until whenever you unlock it, 7:45, whatever you consider your first bell.
Is it envisioned that if that's not a secured entrance, that we still would have a staff member there just to make sure that the doors are not compromised? I know that we currently have a door control system that we have the ability to put an alarm on a door. So if someone goes out, there's a buzz or something that goes off. And if they don't close, then it's a matter of that door stays ajar until someone pulls it close. Any thoughts about, just leaving that alone or still having someone there just to make sure that it doesn't get propped and open?
My expectation is it wouldn't be staffed. Much like any of the other doors, like the door by the community locker rooms or anything like that. That during the day it would not be staffed. It would be alarmed and noted. I hadn't thought it
Yeah.
through a ton, but initially.
Yeah, I don't think we've really had discussions about that. I don't recall that being brought up. I guess my initial thinking was that it wouldn't be staffed, was just my understanding. But again, we hadn't had fully fleshed out conversations about that.
Certainly if a building is going to be built now, it will be built with the idea of having one central entrance and exit point. When this was planned in the late 90s, it was certainly more open, obviously the natural glass, and then to have two spots where people wouldn't necessarily need to intermingle both with traffic and with location of comings and goings. So it's certainly responding to a shift based on how our building is set up, and it works great in a lot of areas. This is just one that would be, I think, some education will be a source of some complaints too.
So if we do go to one entrance and there's walkers that are coming into the lower entrance and then walking through the school, how would that impact the school?
Well, I don't think it would impact the function of the school. One thing, if we think of when walkers, when they get into the school, we're not necessarily supervising them. I mean, it's passively supervised because they're in a gym. And we have had a person or two wander into the wrong restroom or wander into the commons when they shouldn't. And then we try and pick that up. I don't think it's a bigger difference if they check in at that student entrance and then they walk up the stairs and then go to the gym to do their walking and then back out again. I think it's the same. If we wanted to think of it as a risk, it's the same risk. I don't necessarily think of it that way, but in terms of being able to go any other part of the building, they certainly have the ability to do that now.
I guess I'm thinking that, for as nice as the upper entrance is, because I have walked there when I needed to, and it's great. But moving forward, I think, just like I said previously, I think we're going to get down to the one entrance, and I think that however we approach that we have the ability, obviously, whatever we need to change at the upper entrance, and it's going to take a teaching moment for, if we have 10 walkers an hour and, they're coming and going and they use the lower entrance and they go by a security checkpoint, I think that's a workable solution. They're here for walking in. If they walk a little bit farther before they can access.
I do think Dave, you froze up, at least on my computer.
Mine too.
I think Dave's point is right. I love how people like to fight for close parking spots at the Y so that they can go inside and work out for 45 minutes. But I do know that there are groups with people that have mobility impairments that use the walking track because there's just no safe spot to be outdoors and do that activity. And again, this doesn't answer the question of one or two site entrances. I still feel like should be at one entrance. That should be our goal or starting point. But we could consider if it's an organization, and I forget the name of it, the one that's downtown that works with physically disabled people and fitness. We could consider key carding the organization or staff of that organization and work in partnership. That wouldn't be necessarily a first step, but it would be a way to resolve people that really do have notable mobility impairments that would be challenging for them to travel a longer distance from their parking spot and then need to access the elevator and get up to the track. There's going to be a lot of education, and people always, including myself, complain when things change. I do believe that it is a societal understanding that security of schools is different now than it used to be and is of a high priority to people. But we'd have to find that out, I guess, based on how people respond.
Sure, and I would certainly want to recruit our student athletes. They would be the first group I would go to switch their parking. And I'm here at school, so I'm pointing to different locations, but our athletes, I think they would like to park there because a lot of times they're here in the morning and they want to get to their locker rooms. There's 130 students that are in Spark that are here at 7 o'clock every other day to take their human performance class through Spark. And so that would be one where if we try and promote it to our athletes, that you can park here, get in by 8 o'clock is when we lock the doors, and then after practice they're right there. We have had students that have, at the end of the day, they rush out, they get their car from the student lot, then they park in the staff lot, so after practice they can be there, not thinking that they're doing the same thing but after practice. So we would try and recruit people to move to that location, and then we have parking lot security, and then they would just continue to monitor the 2 lots for permits.
Yeah, does one of those people that you see doing that have ridiculously long blonde hair and wear a baseball cap all the time and drive a RAV4? Because I know for a fact that's what Simon does. He'll go in for early baseball, park at the top, move his car back down to student parking, run out. In fact, I think he's convinced his 7th-hour teacher to let him out early, run out and move his car so that it's really close to where he gets done with his practice.
Well, that's certainly, Simon would be.
He's not alone.
No, he's not. But that we would, this goes back to when we had 2 different lots at the current middle school. We recruited some students to park in the red lot, which was by the auditorium and we're by the fields. And so then that was mainly junior, senior. And then the green lot was down by Highway 55 and no one wanted to park there. But I don't think we would assign locations. We certainly could when we sold permits if we had to get to that point. But yeah, there's certain ways we can do that.
And that was my question, whether you would assign people to that lot or have a different permit for each lot or something like that, but then you had kind of answered that. I do like the idea of recognizing that there are people who do have mobility issues that use the walking track and how the lower entrance is really going to be more difficult for them than that upper entrance is. And we had initially talked about not wanting to key card all of the walkers because that would create a security risk because people could give their key cards to someone else. But I think if we limit it, like Lisa was suggesting, to groups that we know have those mobility issues or are working with people with mobility issues, that would be something to consider.
We are currently, our school, very few of us have key access and codes. I know in other buildings they do, but because the high school is open so often, there's really very few of us that do. So if staff members are going to have that and they can, if it's closed, buzz in, buzz out, that would be helpful. I'm sure Cam is very excited about that prospect, but I don't know if we would want to give those staff members the code to disarm the building. I mean, we're open so much. I mean, we're really not open from 10 at night till 6 in the morning and on Sundays. And even on Sundays, most Sundays during the school year, we're open. But I don't think we need to give away that code for after hours access.
I would think that's something that we could work on going forward. I would envision that it would be staff during the day. So if a staff member, whether they're traveling staff or not, maybe they're going to go home for lunch. I mean, I know that happens, or they're going to run over to Chipotle, that they would be able to access the upper door and come back in. But I don't see modifying who has access to turn off the alarm. I don't think this creates an opportunity where everybody can get in on a Sunday now.
Right.
Or I wouldn't want it to.
Staff members currently can check out a card if they need to. Very few need to because we're open a lot.
So to kind of push this conversation along a little bit, are we all in somewhat of an agreement that, we're eventually going to be at one entrance and that we'll take some education and some thought moving forward about moving away from an open entrance at the upper level. I guess that's kind of, I'm looking at, it's a half past and I thought we had an hour's worth of time. So I've got some other commitments. So I'd like to move this question along if you don't mind.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It does sound like we're in agreement about working on one door and working on the logistics of how to make that happen.
And if there's a document, I'd love to see the current plan for that.
I don't have something that's been drawn up since the preschool. If we can get
Yeah, so
something
maybe
sent out.
maybe once Jeff gets it, or Cam gets it from Wald, we just ask you to forward it to the group that's assembled at this meeting, so that we have it in hand with the most recent plan. I do agree with your memory, Jeff, that it got shifted, but I don't have a picture of it with me right now.
Yeah.
So we can just expect that shortly. I'm sure Wald will reply in the next day or two.
I've seen it and I looked through my stuff, and for some reason I don't have a digital or a paper copy of it, but I'll send it out as soon as Kyle sends me the latest. I just checked, he hasn't sent it yet, but
Okay.
I'll make sure I follow up with him on the phone if I have to today.
All right, thank you. So then I guess if we want to move on, we were also wanting to talk about privacy bathrooms. How many, we talked at our last facilities meeting that while we were doing the preschool bathroom and how that could eventually be a privacy bathroom for the high school once the preschool moved out, that doesn't really solve having a privacy bathroom in the high school right now. So we did talk at our last facilities meeting about putting in a pair of bathrooms.
Kelsey, have
So-
you sent those 2 photographs of the, I don't even remember what school it was that you guys go to for swimming?
Oh, Humboldt.
That showed that? And
I saw it.
wondering what did people think about it?
I thought it was interesting. My son thinks it's appalling. My daughter pretty much tries never to go to the bathroom at school, to the extent practical. I think we share that with Wald and we let them come back with what they've seen in practice in other places. I mean, it really is a tricky question, is it not having a privacy bathroom, which I think we need to go forward. And the question at hand is, Mike, where would you say is the best, in your opinion, where would we start? And then knowing that this is just going to be an ongoing issue and eventually all bathrooms will be switched. But we got into a discussion at the last facility meeting about the challenges of vaping in the restrooms, which I know kids are doing excessively, or can be. And so I think the base question for this conversation is, where would we go forward with it? And then I'd be interested, as Wald goes deeper into the design, to see, all right, given Kelsey's input, given thoughts about trying to minimize vaping opportunities, what would they recommend today that maybe they didn't recommend 2 years ago?
In terms of locations, I think if we're doing 1C, and if that does, I mean, so for preschool purposes, that's on the first floor. If that is something that changes down the road, that's a great location because most people are on that level. I think that the second one would be 1A, which is still on that level. So if we have the preschool one will be secure. And then if we have another one in 1A, that provides us with that on that base level for lunches, for any events that are after school or before school, weekend activities. You have, I think that's the heaviest used area, is that first floor. One thing I would say for vaping, and I'm not sure if it's part of the design, and I think I showed it, for those that were, maybe it was Lisa and Kelsey, there was a board work session here at the high school, I think in October of last year, where we took a walk and we looked at it. My recommendation would be, as part of this, is take the door off of that main area. So from the hallway, you can see the entrances to the privacy restrooms. And so if they're floor to ceiling and they're locked, there really isn't a reason to have that door there. The reason being is that we can supervise that without being in the bathroom. And that's one of the things that it's, as staff go into the bathroom, they're obviously we have to go in there to help supervise, but they're very resistant. It's uncomfortable because we're in more of a not private area. But when I think of Hy-Vee in Cottage Grove, they just have a row of secured privacy stalls. It's not marked male or female. Anyone can use it, and there's a common area to wash your hands that provides that ability to come out, wash your hands, and then go on with the rest of your day.
So that November 6th work session, all those drawings that came out of that work session includes this Eastern and Eastern Max privacy partition, which Wold must have been recommending to you at the time.
My one question to that discussion about taking the door off, would that mean, you know, removing the door and frame and maybe enlarging that entrance area a little bit so it would be a little clearer to see in there in passing?
Yeah, so if you think of it, it's not quite an S, but you have an entrance area. You'd go to the left to open the door, then you go to the right to go along the area where you have the stall. So if you just took off the door in those two walls, then it's just completely open. And I also think just in terms of safety, so there's a number of things within bathrooms that we all worry about. But if we are going to full privacy and those are secure, then the best way to supervise them is to have it be more open. And then the privacy is within the actual stall itself.
I do have some concerns about not having a door on a restroom. When we just operationally, when we clean a restroom, we use a kind of a pressure washer machine that it mixes some chemical, and we spray everything down with the chemical, and we come back and pressure wash it, and we suck up all the water that we can off of the floor. We can't get all of the water that's on the floor because there's tile and it's textured, and there's water that stays in the grout. So usually we close and lock the restrooms. And if we weren't able to do that, we couldn't keep people out of the restrooms. And then for a weekend, I think about community ed events. If we need to close and lock restrooms and guide people to a different area of the school to use it, we wouldn't be able to do that. And then if we do enlarge that entrance, I just wonder what it would do to our balancing in the hallway. Our HVAC systems serve a certain amount of air into different areas, and I wonder if we removed part of those walls, if our exhaust system would throw off our hallway air system. I'd just be curious how that would work.
I think those are really good design questions, Cam. I'm confident that Wold has managed something, and maybe the one that Kelsey sent out, I think you were probably in this group on Humboldt, it looked more secured, but the wall had been transitioned to window pane. So windows were inset in the wall so they could still see in. I would hope that as we go, if we say, all right, 1A is the place to go, Mike's answer was very clear and immediate, and I feel confident that that's the right choice. I think it's really important that you stay in conversation with Wold about those operational questions. They're very valid, and I suspect that Wold has a range of potential responses. I'm going to disappear for a second, let in my barking dog who's making my neighbors nuts, and I'll be right back.
Okay. The one question I pose, and go ahead, Lisa, I'm just going to talk a minute about anybody who the last time they were up to
Right, I lost your sound for a second. Did anyone else lose Dave?
Yeah, I don't have his sound either.
I don't have a sound either.
Okay.
an access with
Dave.
Go ahead.
We missed everything you just said.
Let's try this. If I take away
Okay.
the video, what I was going to say was, if anybody's been to the airport, lately in the last year in Terminal 2 especially, and I think they're doing it in Terminal 1, that the doorways have transitioned and they're using a gate when it's being serviced, and otherwise it gives you a more open view of the area, not to the toilets, but to the, at least to the room and the hand washing facilities. And maybe that was by design, that they had not a problem with airflow, but I did notice that this last year when we were flying out of there that they had changed their bathroom setup. And I'm sure Wold can look at that, but you know, I think that moving forward, you know, as Mike has said last year, that, you know, the vaping issue and whatever else, you know, we need, but we still need to provide privacy. And with the privacy stalls and eliminating the urinals, there's got to be a way that we can make this work and improve our situation.
You know, we've talked about doing a pair. And so obviously this isn't changing every bathroom in the school. So as we talk about vaping issues, when we only have it down to a pair of bathrooms, will kids who want to vape just go somewhere else? I mean, is working on vaping for these 2 bathrooms the priority? Should we, I mean, how much more expensive do we think it would be to adjust this later if we were to renovate other bathrooms later on? Or is this something that would be worth trying to do right now? Lisa.
I don't know what the true adjustment is for vaping other than increasing some visibility and supervision. But I think sort of like at the middle school in a way, if we're in there and we're in the neighborhood and we wanted, privacy is the priority. There's no doubt in my mind that privacy, gender neutral private bathrooms is the priority. But if we can take advantage of and try something to reduce places within our building that are being used by students for vaping, I think we should take it. If it's a $500,000 difference, you know, I would expect Kyle to come back and say, oh, we can solve it for $1 million. I'd want to know that. But if we can solve it for a little bit or a try, I want to make it a high second priority.
I think if we were to think of one.
Go ahead, Mike.
Okay, thank you, Dave. If we're looking at 1C, I think we are still thinking that would be a secured door, because if with preschool that's there, we want the card access. We do not want, we have art rooms there. We don't want that. So I think if we're looking at trying one, it might be in 1A. Let's try that one out and see. Because that really, to our general public and to our students, that's the only one that's going to be available to them.
Okay, and then my other question for you is, we had talked about, they have in their cost estimates, cost per pair for the bathrooms. So would you envision 2 bathrooms in 1A, or one of the questions we had was doing one in 1A and doing another one on a different floor, or?
So there's 3 bathrooms on each floor in the academic area. And there's 5 bathrooms by the gym and the auditorium in the main office. One of those is a family bathroom that anyone can use. But I think by and large, the ones that are used throughout the day for our students are the ones in the academic side of the building, A, B, and C on those 3 floors. So if we were to add another one, then we probably would go with second floor, because that's the next level of use that's there. I think it's okay to have, if 1B, if that stays, it's currently a boys' bathroom. If that stays a boys' bathroom, that's fine. Because I think that if we're trying to give students access to privacy, having everything on the first floor, if we were to do 3, I think it's best to put one on second floor. So maybe, you know, someplace A, B, or C. On first floor, what we're looking at for A and C would be removing female bathrooms and changing them to gender neutral. And we currently have 5 female bathrooms and 4 male bathrooms on that side of the building. So if we go up a floor, it makes sense to me, I think, to remove a boy bathroom, which is again A or C.
I think it would be smart to, move up a floor, but one of the things that we probably haven't talked about today, but we talked about last time, was that the commitment about over at the auditorium bathrooms. And I remember Kyle talking about, there's a commitment to, was it the state or the Fed, about making changes, and that would be one of the places that we would do that for more gender neutral bathrooms for that end of the building. But I do think that in the academic wings, we probably should look at second floor, and Mike would probably could give us the best idea, A, B, and C.
Yeah, I think the middle school piece was about accessibility and just getting in there and doing the accessible piece. I would concur, second floor, taking out a boys' bathroom, and just to get it a little bit more even. And I'd take Mike's recommendation on usage. I feel like A might get used more, never having been in there during the day, really, just because it's by the bridge, and there might be more people going by there. But I would say whatever that recommendation is from Mike.
Right.
might
Or
know.
would it be, yeah. Or I was thinking if you stagger them into different sections so that if there are kids who want to access it, but they're over in C, that they don't have to walk the whole length of the floor.
Right, but if you put it in B, I think that's a girl's bathroom again on second floor,
Right.
Mhm.
So
or a female bathroom.
I think the staggering part makes a lot of sense too. And so if you went in 2C, you'd have 1 in 1A, 1 in 2C. You'd still have on, that makes sense. I mean, if we're thinking of a student who has to go to the other side of the school to go to the bathroom, I think some of them are doing that now by coming to the main office, which is a family bathroom. So I think just making it a little closer would be a good idea. And I think 2A, yeah, there's probably more people that use 2A because it's by the bridge. So I think either one would be just fine, but it's going to be either A or C. And if you go with parts of the building because students are spread out in our building, that's a fine decision too.
Yeah, no, that was a good point, Mike. I'm sorry I forgot, or at least put it low in my brain, that 1C, while it would be transitioned to private stalls, is not immediately available. So I can see why 2C would make sense. And then again, I would think Cam would have some of the same concerns, if not the exact same concerns, on second floor. And we just need to make sure he's really actively involved in the conversation with Wold about what these look like. What I'd like to understand going forward, because I too am aware of time, is if we bring these 2 recommendations to Wold, when would we want to bid these out? I would imagine summer 2021 for construction. And then, let's back into when we need to make a design decision, look at some alternatives, design decision, bid it out.
Yeah, I think those would be good questions for Wold. When do we need the bids in? I think it sounds like we do still have some questions about the design decision for both pieces that we're looking at here. And so trying to get those answers from Wold, those drawings from Wold, and see what that would look like, and then working with Cam. I think that all makes sense. We did also mention wanting to discuss the showers and the locker rooms and what that would look like. We've talked about how people may not use the bathrooms as much, and so if they shrink down, I know we've seen different drawings from Wold, and some of them take out more showers than others, some of the designs, and so kind of those priorities as well.
I think if
And
I
where that
remember,
falls.
and this, I'm going back in my memory here, but I think part of it is that if we make some adjustments to the showers, that we also have to make one fully accessible for someone who might be in a wheelchair. So I think that we do have some extra room in our current showers in our locker rooms. it's not fully as nice, or it doesn't have a bench, or it certainly doesn't have a door. But once we start doing that, I think that was part of it as well. Then we have to take something out to create something more accessible to someone who may be coming in a chair.
So I know we talked at our last facilities meeting, which was maybe just a week or so ago now, getting into a routine of monthly facilities meetings as we drive this bond to completion, both looking at ongoing projects and our additional priorities. So as the agenda gets built for our May meeting, now that we have answers on the questions at the high school, I'd like to get those on our agenda for that. And we may not have final design ideas to be presented in May, but I'd like Kyle to give us here's a summary on this, here's our timeline, here's a summary on this, here's our timeline. Because I feel like we have our questions answered, maybe with exception of exactly what the locker rooms look like, but let's pull that forward out of the site-specific meeting into our overall meeting. And then we can reach out as site-specific questions get developed.
Did everybody get the wool piece from 9/4 of 19 about locker rooms at the high school with the different designs layout? Did everybody get that?
Yeah. Yeah, I think there was a briefing to the whole board at a work session because I wasn't on facilities and I have a copy of it.
Yeah, so do I, and so I'm assuming that everybody, this is the issues that we were talking about, so I wanted.
Yeah, I think it's just getting a little bit more real because now when we last met, we put that as a priority. It's remaining on our priority list. So now it's sort of time to start having the real trade-off conversation with regard to restroom stalls versus showers. And I have the same recollection Mike did about creating accessible spaces as soon as we get in there and make modifications.
So I have a question for the group here. I hear Lisa saying that May meeting, they'd like to have some updated bid timeline and recommendations. Jen and I are meeting with Kyle and Scott Thursday at noon just to go through some nuts and bolts kind of stuff on projects that are in place or being developed. So we could relay that message to them. What I'm hearing is we've already asked for the updated lower entrance, secure entrance, the most updated drawing on that and estimate. And then you've had this restroom conversation. Is there something that specifically you want them to prepare regarding restrooms for that May meeting, or is that still not determined yet?
I think the thing I heard the grouping ask for is ideas, like specific layout ideas for the restroom, trying to accommodate increased supervision
You
with
cut out for a
privacy
second
stalls.
there.
Okay. I'll cut off.
So it's going to be one restroom, the preschool remodel, and then one additional restroom
One pair.
remodel. And Mike,
One pair.
One pair. So it
One
would be
pair.
1A
1A
and 2C.
and 2C.
Just to hear some alternatives. I think we've already committed around what the privacy stall looks like, although we could be reminded of that. But to speak to what are their thoughts, having had conversations with Cam, I hope, prior to whenever our May meeting is, about ways to increase supervision and also allow for security when we want them closed, and cleaning and airflow questions. What those alternatives might look like so that we can talk about it as a facility committee and kind of keep that moving. And then the third item on locker rooms is just to bring that conversation back forward again. If we were to keep athletic and PE locker rooms on the remodel agenda, just bring that conversation forward with what they know now and start talking about space trade-offs.
Yeah. So I think we're pretty set on the privacy portion of the bathrooms. And from what I have written down, I have saying that the cost they've given us is for full partitions. But if we can confirm that and confirm what those partitions look like, I think that would be good. And then like Lisa said, how we integrate the concerns with supervision and vaping and what kind of design ideas could we be looking at for that? Because I don't believe, in my recollection, that we've seen drawings of that.
Information I got from the past three that were on the facilities committee, they all three agreed that it was full walls and not partitions. That's what was agreed to last year.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But yeah, just confirming that.
Calls out a price for both options for the privacy stalls and the privacy walls.
Okay. Right, does that sound like we're on, oh, what date?
I was going to say, do we have it all covered? And so we need to kind of have some idea of what we want to address when we meet next time. Are we good? Because I've got
Yeah,
like 4 minutes, so I was just wondering.
yeah, I think we have it all covered. Did we miss anything, Mike?
So this is a completely different question. Is there anything with regards to COVID or our way of doing business in the future that would affect preschool coming here? So I have not heard that, but I appreciate the time with the facility committee. Is that something we are still full go, or is that something where, or is that not even been talked about?
Nothing has been talked about yet. I know that Carrie has called me just with concerns about how will this affect preschool enrollment for next year. But we have not, as a board, discussed changing the plans with preschool in any way.
Okay,
Yeah, I think we're still moving forward with everybody keeping their knees bent because I don't know if we know what school is going to look like in the fall.
Yeah.
Agreed. I think that it's probably too early to tell. At least the target keeps moving along, but I think the idea is that moving into fall, that there will have to be some adjustments, but we would go with what we had originally planned.
great. No, there's some internal things and I can wait, but I just wanted to have the ability to ask the question. So thank you.
Well, Mike, you know, we're waiting for that next executive order, and if it puts us out through the end of the school year, then we've got lots of question marks about summer and fall. If they give us some opportunity to come back and bring closure to the year, then you know that summer and fall are going to look more like normal. So we're all kind of sitting on pins and needles with waiting for that next word.
Sounds good. Thank you. And again, thanks for the opportunity to talk about this and have some input, and we'll make what you want to have done.
Thanks, Mike. Hey, Kelsey and Becky, could you hang on for 1 second after everybody jumps off? I just have a logistics question.
Okay, have a good day, everybody.
All right,
Bye, Mike.
bye.
Take care.
Bye, Dave.
Bye, Dave.
See you later, Cam.